Hello and welcome back to First Chapter Friday. Thanks for sticking with me and listening to me talk about all of these books that I love. My high school students in particular are probably really surprised that we've made it this far into First Chapter Fridays, and I haven't talked about a Margaret Atwood book yet, because if you have been in any of my humanities classes, you know that I have a signed poster from Margaret Atwood on my wall, that I got to meet her on my birthday several years ago, and that she is one of my favorite authors. And so today, I want to tell you about a Margaret Atwood book that I don't think I've actually talked about with any of my classes, so it should be new for all of you. It is geared more towards grade 11 and 12, just because some of the content, but because that is predominantly what I teach, I feel like it's still okay that I tell you about this book. So I want to tell you about a book called The Penelopiad, and it is a retelling of a classic Greek myth. If you have ever heard of the Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, who goes away to fight in the Trojan War, and then it takes him like 20 years to return home. And when he returns home, he finds out that the men in his kingdom decided he was probably dead and have been trying to marry his wife, Penelope, to take over the kingdom. And, he's a little grumpy about that. And that's really the only part of the original story that Penelope is involved in. And so Margaret Atwood decided to retell the story of the Iliad from Penelope's perspective. And so it's called the Penelopiad. So on the back of the book, it tells us, for Penelope, wife of Odysseus, maintaining a kingdom while her husband fights in the Trojan War is not a simple business. Already aggrieved that he has been lured away due to the shocking behavior of her beautiful cousin Helen, Penelope must bring up her wayward son, face down scandalous rumors, and keep over 100 lustful, greedy, and bloodthirsty suitors at bay. And then, when Odysseus finally returns and slaughters the murderous suitors, he brutally hangs Penelope's 12 beloved maids. What were his motives? And what was Penelope herself up to? In the Penelopiad, Atwood gives Penelope a wise and witty voice to tell her own story and set the record straight for good. So the way the story is constructed is, the idea is that Penelope is dead and she's in the underworld. And in the underworld, you can look at your life and what it was and see things that maybe you didn't see when you were alive. And so she is choosing to tell her story now. And one of the things that I really love about the book is occasionally between the chapters of Penelope narrating, there are what are called chorus chapters. And those are narrated by those 12 hanged maids who are also dead and are also in the underworld with Penelope. Because in the original story, which was written in Greece, there would have been a chorus or a group of men who were narrating the story in between the action. And so there's these little chapters that get inserted, and they're always in rhyme, and they're always like the maids are singing or playing, but the maids are also telling their side of the story and what happened to them. And so I need to let you know that there are some trigger warnings in this book around sexual assault and manipulation and things like that. But the way that it's dealt with gives the women a really, really strong voice in what happens to them and telling their story. And that's what I like about it. So I'm going to read to you from chapter 1, which is called A Low Art. Now that I'm dead, I know everything. This is what I wished would happen, but like so many of my wishes, it failed to come true. I know only a few factoids that I didn't know before. Death is much too high a price to pay for the satisfaction of curiosity, needless to say. Since being dead, since achieving this state of bonelessness, liplessness, breastlessness, I've learned some things I would rather not know, as one does when listening at windows or opening other people's letters. You think you'd like to read minds? Think again. Down here, everyone arrives with a sack, like those sacks used to keep the winds in. But each of those sacks is full of words you've spoken, words you've heard, words that have been said about you. Some sacks are very small, others large. My own is a reasonable size, though a lot of the words in it concern my eminent husband. What a fool he made of me, some say. It was a specialty of his, making fools. He got away with everything, which was another of his specialties, getting away. He was always so plausible. Many people have believed that his version of events was the true one, give or take a few murders, a few beautiful seductresses, a few one-eyed monsters. Even I believed him from time to time. I knew he was tricky and a liar. I just didn't think he would play his tricks and try his lies on me. Hadn't I been faithful? Hadn't I waited and waited and waited, despite the temptation, almost the compulsion to do otherwise? And what did I amount to once the official version gained ground? An edifying legend, a stick used to beat other women with. Why couldn't they be as considerate, as trustworthy, as all-suffering as I had been? That was the line they took, the singers and the yarn spinners. Don't follow my example, I wanted to scream in your ears. Yes, yours. But when I try to scream, I sound like an owl. Of course, I had inklings about his slipperiness, his wiliness, his foxiness, his unscrupulousness, but I turned a blind eye. I kept my mouth shut, or if I opened it, I sang his praises. I didn't contradict, I didn't ask awkward questions, I didn't dig deep. I wanted happy endings in those days, and happy endings are best achieved by keeping the right doors locked and going to sleep during the rampages. But after the main events were over and things had become less legendary, I realized how many people were laughing at me behind my back, how they were jeering, making jokes about me, jokes both clean and dirty, how they were turning me into a story or into several stories, though not the kind of story I'd prefer to hear about myself. What can a woman do when scandalous gossip travels the world? If she defends herself, she sounds guilty. So I waited some more. Now that all the others have run out of air, it's my turn to do a little story-making. I owe it to myself. I've had to work myself up to it. It's a low art tale-telling. Old women go in for it, strolling beggars, blind singers, maidservants, children, folks with time on their hands. Once people would have laughed if I tried to play the minstrel. There's nothing more preposterous than an aristocrat fumbling around with the arts. But who cares about public opinion now? The opinion of the people down here, the opinion of shadows, of echoes. So I'll spin a thread of my own. The difficulty is that I have no mouth through which I can speak. I can't make myself understood, not in your world, the world of bodies, of tongues and fingers. And most of the time I have no listeners, not on your side of the river. Those of you who may catch the odd whisper, the odd squeak, so easily mistake my words for breezes rustling the dry reeds, for bats at twilight, for bad dreams. But I've always been of a determined nature. Patient, they used to call me. I like to see a thing through to the end. So that is chapter 1 of the Penelopiad. Again, because of content, it is more of a high school book, but high school students, if you're looking for something different than what you've read, if you liked Greek myths when you were younger and you would like to read a story that's kind of a different perspective on it, if you've liked the recently published Circe or Song of Achilles, this is another retelling of a myth from a different character's perspective, so you might enjoy it. And otherwise, I hope that you will join me again to talk about another book. Thank you.